Commander Marcus Houston stood before the great window of Harmony Station and looked down at the black void of space. Earth was not visible from here, but he knew exactly where it was. Behind him, in the vast conference chamber, the Galactic Federation was preparing to tell humanity exactly what they would be allowed to do. Marcus had been chosen to lead this delegation because he was a soldier, not a politician. The political leaders of Earth wanted someone who understood power and respect. They wanted someone who would not back down easily. What they did not know was that Marcus already understood something fundamental about this meeting. The Federation had no intention of treating humanity as an equal. The conference chamber of Harmony Station was built to intimidate. The ceiling was impossibly high, stretching up into darkness. The table was enormous, designed so that those sitting at it would feel small. Representatives from 7 alien species already occupied their positions. Each species had sent their strongest voices, their most experienced diplomats. Marcus walked back into the chamber. Catherine Vale, his tactical advisor, sat at his left. She was brilliant at reading people and situations. Her dark eyes scanned the room constantly, noting every movement, every exchange between the alien delegates. She had warned him this morning that the preliminary reports looked bad. The Federation had written the terms of humanity's entry before the negotiation even began. The lead ambassador was Krell, a tall creature from the Arothian species. His skin was a deep purple, and his 4 eyes moved with predatory precision. Krell had sent word through the diplomatic channels that he believed this negotiation would be quick. He had also made it clear that he saw humanity as no more than a minor addition to the Federation. Perhaps useful for grunt work and resource extraction, but certainly not worthy of real power or autonomy. The Federation ambassador from the Valaxian species spoke first. She outlined the terms calmly, as if she was reading from a document that had already been decided. Humanity would join the Federation, yes, but there would be strict conditions. First, all human military assets would come under Federation command. Earth's Navy would not be independent. Every ship, every weapon, every strategic decision would be filtered through Federation authority. This meant humanity could not protect itself without permission. Second, human expansion into space would be limited to a small sector designated by the Federation. Earth would be confined, unable to grow, unable to explore, unable to discover. Expansion rights would be reviewed every 5 years and could be denied at will. Third, human technology development would be restricted. Any new technology discovered by humans would need Federation approval before it could be used. Advanced systems would be shared with the Federation at no cost. This meant Earth would never catch up to the advanced species. They would always be behind, always dependent. Fourth, there would be mandatory cultural integration programs. This was the coolest part. Young humans would be taken to Federation worlds to be educated in the ways of galactic civilization. They would learn that human culture was primitive. They would learn that human values were outdated. Slowly, generation by generation, humanity would be absorbed into the Federation, until nothing uniquely human remained. Marcus listened without moving. Catherine's hand rested near her tablet, but she did not write anything down. They had both understood this was coming. When the Valaxian ambassador finished, Krell leaned back in his chair, his 4 eyes all focused on Marcus. There was something close to amusement in his expression. "These terms are not negotiable," Krell said. "They represent the Federation's generosity. Humanity has proven unable to solve its own internal conflicts. You are a violent species, divided by national borders and religious beliefs. We are offering you stability, order, and a place in something greater than yourselves." Marcus wanted to stand up and walk out right then. Something in Catherine's posture told him she was thinking the same thing. But he did not move. Not yet. The Zelantian representative spoke next, his voice like grinding metal. Humanity will benefit from integration. You will have access to advanced medicine, advanced technology, and the protection of the Federation military. In exchange, you give us the things we value: control, order, and predictability. None of them even tried to hide it. This was not a negotiation. This was a surrender masked as an agreement that another species, the Tharn, added their input. We have reviewed human history. You are prone to violence. You attack each other over resources that should be shared. Your governments lie to their own people regularly. You are not ready for a position of true independence in the galaxy. Marcus felt Catherine's eyes on him. He knew what she wanted him to do. She wanted him to stand up, to refuse to walk out. Part of him wanted the same thing. But he had learned long ago that the best time to fight was when your opponent thought you were already beaten. "I have a question," Marcus said. His voice was calm and level. Every alien in the room turned toward him. "Yes?" Krell asked, as if the question would be amusing. "If we are so primitive, so dangerous, and so unworthy of independence, why are you so eager to bring us into the Federation?" Marcus let the question hang in the air. "If we are truly the liability you describe, wouldn't it be better to simply leave us alone?" Krell did not answer immediately. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence. The other ambassadors exchanged looks with each other. Finally, Krell spoke. "The reason, Commander, is that we prefer to control threats rather than face them later. It is simpler to bring you into the fold now than to deal with an independent humanity in 50 years that has grown stronger through isolation." Marcus nodded slowly. Now he understood. They were not trying to help humanity. They were trying to prevent humanity from ever becoming a problem. They were trying to crush human independence before it had a chance to take real shape. "I see," Marcus said. He stood up from his chair. Catherine's hand moved to the communication device at her belt, ready for anything. "Then, we will need time to consider your terms." "Time is limited," the Valaxian said. "We require an answer within 5 days. After that, the offer may change." Marcus did not respond to the threat. He simply nodded at Catherine, and together they walked from the chamber. Behind them, the ambassadors from 7 alien species sat in satisfied silence, already congratulating themselves on another victory. What they did not know was that Marcus Houston had already made a decision. He had decided that humanity would not be signing anything. He had decided that the time for surrender had ended before it could begin. He had decided that one man, standing alone, could say no to the entire galaxy. The observation deck of the human quarters was empty at this hour. Marcus sat alone, watching the distant lights of other stations move through space. Catherine entered silently, carrying a secured datapad. They had learned not to trust the station's communication systems. The Federation monitored everything. Catherine sat down without speaking. She activated the pad, and a stream of data appeared. Numbers, military statistics, technological assessments, resource evaluations. Information that Earth had kept hidden from the galaxy. "How bad is it?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. "Worse than they think," Catherine said. She pulled up the first file. "Our 3 Titan-class destroyers are superior to anything the Arothians have fielded in the last decade. Our weapon systems are more efficient. Our engines are faster. Our targeting computers are more accurate." She swiped to the next display. "The Federation believes we have 14 working military vessels. We actually have 23. The others are being held in deep space reserves they don't know about. 2 more Titan-class ships are currently in final assembly. In 12 months, we would have 4 of them." Marcus said nothing. He simply listened as Catherine laid out the truth of human capability. "Our research in quantum propulsion is decades ahead of Federation science," Catherine continued. "Not years, decades. We have developed antimatter containment systems that the Federation abandoned as too dangerous. Our AI development is superior to anything they have. And Commander, our people are hungry." That last part made Marcus look at her. "Hungry? Hungry for the stars," Catherine said. "We have explored 90% of our solar system. We have established colonies on the Moon, Mars, and the asteroid belt. We have ships that can reach the outer planets in months instead of years. Earth is not ready to be caged. We are ready to expand." She pulled up another file, this one showing Federation military deployments in nearby sectors. "I have been analyzing their strategies, their movement patterns, their supply lines. They are strong, Marcus. Much stronger than us. But they are also complacent. They believe no one can challenge them. They believe they have already won every war before it begins." Marcus looked at the data on the screen. "What are you telling me, Catherine?" "I am telling you that if we sign those terms, we lose everything," Catherine said. "We lose our independence, our future, and ultimately, our humanity. But I am also telling you that we have options the Federation does not expect us to have. War?" Marcus asked directly. "Not necessarily," Catherine said. "But the ability to fight. The ability to refuse. The ability to walk away and survive what comes after. The Federation thinks we are desperate children begging for acceptance. What they do not understand is that we do not need them." Marcus leaned back in his chair. Outside the window, a Federation patrol ship moved past, sleek and confident in its superiority. "They have made a critical mistake," Catherine said. "They looked at our history of internal conflict and concluded that we are weak. They saw our young civilization and concluded that we are inferior. But they did not look at what we have actually built. They did not account for human innovation, human determination, or human willingness to take risks they would never take." She pulled up the military assessment one more time. "Look at this data. Every advantage we have comes from being willing to try things the established powers considered too dangerous. Our weapons are more powerful because we are willing to push materials and physics to their limits. Our ships are faster because we are willing to accept higher failure rates in exchange for greater advancement. Our AI is smarter because we are willing to develop systems that make other civilizations nervous." "What are you saying, Catherine?" Marcus asked, though he was beginning to understand. "I am saying that humanity can survive alone in the galaxy. It will be harder. It will be slower. It will be more dangerous. But we can do it," Catherine said. She leaned forward. "And I'm saying that if we sign those terms, we will never have this chance again. In 5 years, all our advanced weapons will be under Federation control. In 10 years, our best young people will be scattered across Federation worlds, learning to think like Arathians and Valaxians. In 20 years, there will be no independent humanity left. Just another species following Federation rules." Marcus stood up and walked back to the window. He thought about Earth. He thought about the people he had left behind, the people who had chosen him to make this decision. He thought about his daughter, still on Earth, in a school where they were teaching her the history of human achievement. What would happen to her if the Federation took control? What kind of future would she have? What happens if we refuse? Marcus asked. "That depends," Catherine said. "It depends on how we refuse and what we do after. Simple refusal might mean they declare us hostile. They might attempt a blockade. They might try to isolate us from trade and communication. That would hurt, but it would not destroy us." "And if they attack?" Marcus asked. "Then we fight," Catherine said quietly. "We lose some ships. They lose some ships. But we survive, and eventually, other species will realize that the Federation is not invincible. There are species in the outer sectors that resent Federation control. There are worlds that have been exploited for resources. If we show that a species can say no and survive, everything changes. Marcus turned away from the window. He looked at Catherine directly. You have already made your decision. Yes, Catherine said. I made it when I read these reports. I made it when I understood what those terms actually meant. I made it when I realized that signing them is the real surrender, the real failure. She stood up and walked toward Marcus. But you are the commander. You have to make the call. I will support whatever you decide. Over the next 3 days, Marcus and Catherine attended more negotiation sessions. The Federation ambassadors became increasingly condescending. They started interrupting Marcus when he tried to speak. They began making jokes about human intelligence, human courage, human capability. The Thoran ambassador actually laughed out loud when Marcus mentioned Earth's space exploration achievements. Each insult, each dismissal, each moment of disrespect made Marcus's resolve stronger. These beings looked at humanity and saw only a tool to be used. They could not imagine that humans might have thoughts or dreams or ambitions beyond what the Federation allowed. On the morning of the 4th day, Marcus received a message from Earth's government. They had been monitoring the negotiations remotely. They knew what was happening. The message was simple. The decision was his. Whatever he decided, Earth would back him completely. Marcus read the message twice. Then he deleted it. He had already made his decision. He had made it the first moment he realized that the Federation had no intention of negotiating in good faith. All that remained was the moment to act on that decision. That moment was coming tomorrow. Marcus could feel it in his chest, in his bones, in every fiber of his being. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, humanity would stop begging for acceptance and start demanding respect. Catherine understood. She was sitting in her quarters, reviewing military data, making preparations that might be needed very soon. She was ready for whatever came next. So was Marcus. They both understood that once he walked away from the negotiation table, there would be no going back. The 5th day of negotiations began like every other day. The enormous conference chamber was filled with the representatives of the 7 species. Krell sat at the center of the great table, his 4 eyes moving with the confidence of a being who had never experienced defeat. The Valaxian ambassador arranged her papers. The Tharn representative prepared his audio recording devices. No one truly expected a surprise. Marcus Houston entered the chamber at precisely 0800 hours. Catherine Vale followed, her expression unreadable. They took their seats at the human section of the table. Marcus did not speak. He simply sat, his back straight, his eyes forward. Krell leaned back in his chair and smiled. It was not a smile that contained any warmth or kindness. It was the smile of a predator that has already tasted blood. We have prepared the final version of the terms, Krell announced. They are, essentially, identical to the initial proposal. As you can see, we are willing to be flexible. He gestured to an aide, who began distributing data tablets to the human delegation. Marcus picked up the tablet and looked at it for exactly 10 seconds. Then he set it down. The terms were the same. Complete military subjugation, expansion restrictions, technology limitations, cultural integration, everything designed to turn humanity into something less than human. Everything designed to ensure that Earth would never pose any kind of threat to Federation power. We are prepared to have you sign these documents today, Krell said. In fact, we insist upon it. The terms are generous. The Federation is offering you protection, security, and a future as part of something greater than yourselves. You would be foolish to refuse. The Valaxian ambassador spoke up. Humanity will benefit greatly from these restrictions. You are young. You are impulsive. You need guidance. The Federation provides that guidance. The Thoran representative added, We have reviewed your military history. You are prone to aggressive expansion and violent conflict. These restrictions will keep you and the rest of the galaxy safe from your own destructive impulses. Each ambassador added their own comments, each one designed to emphasize the idea that humanity was lucky, privileged, grateful even, to be offered these terms. No one asked if Marcus or Catherine had any comments. No one asked if humanity had any objections. The decision had been made. All that remained was the formality of signature. Marcus stood up very slowly. His chair made a slight sound as he pushed back from the table. Catherine rose with him, her hand resting on the communication device at her belt. Ready for anything, that the ambassadors fell silent. They had not expected this. In their experience, younger species always complied. Compliance was certain. Obedience was assured. Marcus buttoned his uniform jacket with deliberate care. He made sure each button was perfectly aligned. He straightened his sleeves. He adjusted his collar. The movement was slow, ritualistic, final. "No," he said. Krell's 4 eyes widened slightly. "I am sorry, Commander." "Did you say something?" "I said no," Marcus repeated. "Humanity will not be signing these terms. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever." The chamber erupted into sound. Ambassadors began speaking over each other, their voices rising in anger and disbelief. Marcus continued, his voice clear and steady. "You came here with terms written before we even sat down. You came here assuming we would accept anything because you believe we are desperate and weak. You came here to conquer us not with weapons, but with bureaucracy and restriction." Krell stood up from his chair. His purple skin seemed to darken. "You are making a grave mistake, Commander." "No," Marcus said. "I would be making the grave mistake if I signed your paper. I would be condemning Earth to a future of slow extinction, watching our people become less than what they are, while you tell us we should be grateful." Catherine stood perfectly still beside him, her eyes scanning the room, noting every reaction, every movement. "Let me tell you what will happen now," Marcus said. "Earth will not join your Federation. Earth will not submit its military to your control. Earth will not accept your restrictions on expansion or technology. Earth will not send its children to be remade in your image." The Valaxian ambassador stood up. "Then you will face the consequences. The Federation does not accept refusal. You will be isolated. You will be cut off from galactic trade. You will face penalties for this arrogance." "We accept that risk," Marcus said simply, "because the alternative is far worse. The alternative is surrender. The alternative is the slow death of everything that makes us human." Krell's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "You are declaring Earth hostile to the Federation?" "I am declaring Earth independent," Marcus said. "We will defend ourselves if necessary. We will trade with any species that will trade with us. We will explore the galaxy on our own terms. And we will never accept the chains you are trying to wrap around us, no matter how carefully you disguise them as protection." Marcus turned and looked directly at Krell. For a moment, the two beings stood in absolute stillness, separated by meters of space, but also by fundamental differences in how they viewed power, freedom, and the future. "You made one critical mistake," Marcus said. "You looked at human history and saw only failure. You saw our conflicts and concluded we were weak. But what you failed to see is that every achievement in human history came from refusing to accept the boundaries others tried to place on us. We climbed mountains that were supposed to be impossible. We crossed oceans that were supposed to be uncrossable. We built flying machines when everyone said humans were not meant to fly. We reached for the moon when everyone said it was fantasy." Marcus gestured toward Catherine. "And now we are reaching for the stars. Not because we are desperate. Not because we are begging for permission. But because it is what we do. It is what we are." He turned toward the door, then looked back at the ambassadors one final time. When you report this to your governments, tell them that humanity does not negotiate with beings who do not respect us. Tell them that we are leaving this station. Tell them that the next time we meet, it will be as equals, or it will not be at all. Catherine moved toward the door with Marcus. Behind them, the chamber erupted into complete chaos. The Erathian ambassador was shouting orders to his security forces. The Valaxian ambassador was demanding that the station's command prevent the humans from leaving. The Tharan representative was recording everything, his voice rising above the others. But Marcus did not stop. He did not look back. He simply walked toward the exit with Catherine at his side, and as they passed through the doors into the corridor beyond, something had changed. They had come as supplicants. They were leaving as something far more dangerous. They were leaving as beings who had said no to the most powerful force in the galaxy and had survived the saying of it. The human transport ship left Harmony Station within 2 hours. Krell had ordered their departure, but Marcus and Catherine would have left anyway. As they accelerated away from the station, Catherine received the first message from an unknown sender. The message came through a private channel, encoded so heavily that only Catherine's decryption algorithms could break it. It was from the Keldon merchant community. 3 words: "We want to talk." By the time the ship was a day away from the station, Marcus had received 7 more contact requests. Each one was from a different species. Each one wanted something from humanity. Some wanted to trade. Some wanted military cooperation. Some wanted simple diplomatic relations. Thought the message from the Wraith was the most direct. They were a species that had been controlled by the Federation for 300 years. Their message said simply, "You showed us something possible. We would like to learn more." Marcus called a meeting with Catherine and the other senior officers in their private quarters. They sat in a circle, the secure communication system running continuously, blocking out any Federation surveillance attempts. "Something is happening," Marcus said. "Something we did not anticipate." Catherine pulled up the messages on the central display. The walkaway was supposed to be a statement, a refusal. What we did not expect was how it would be received by other species. Commander David Price, the human naval officer in charge of their escort ships, leaned forward. They are seeing it as an act of defiance, an act of resistance. Many of them have been looking for a reason to resist Federation control. We just gave them one. Over the next week, the situation developed rapidly. The Federation attempted to implement a blockade on human trade channels. They declared that any species trading with humans would face penalties. They called humanity a hostile power and demanded that all Federation members cut off contact, but the blockade failed almost immediately. The Keldon merchant fleet simply ignored the order. 60 ships from the Keldon Trading Consortium moved toward Earth's territory, seeking permission to establish trade routes. When the Federation threatened to intercept them, the Wraith sent military escort vessels. The Federation could not fight both species without risking serious losses. More importantly, other species saw what was happening. They saw that the Federation's threats were not automatic. They saw that there was a cost to enforcement. They saw that humanity had given them permission to think differently about their own situation. By the end of the second week, Marcus received a direct communication from the Outer Sector Coalition. They represented 37 smaller worlds that the Federation had kept isolated and controlled. Their message was clear. If you are willing to fight for independence, we would like to join you. Catherine analyzed the strategic situation carefully. Humanity alone was a minor power, but humanity plus the Wraith, the Keldon, and the Outer Sector Coalition was something entirely different. It was not yet a match for the Federation, but it was no longer helpless either. They are starting to understand that the Federation is not invincible, Catherine told Marcus in their private quarters. We showed them that one species can say no. Now other species are doing the same. Earth's government responded to the developments with measured enthusiasm. They authorized Marcus to begin preliminary negotiations with the coalition species. Trade agreements were drawn up. Military cooperation agreements were initiated. Scientific collaboration began. 3 weeks after the walkaway, Marcus received an invitation from the Wraith government. They wanted him to visit their homeworld. They wanted to understand humanity better. They wanted to learn how a young species had found the courage to defy beings with thousands of years of galactic experience. The journey to the Wraith homeworld was long, but it gave Marcus time to think. He spent hours in his quarters, reviewing the responses from species around the galaxy. Not all of them were positive. Some species remained loyal to the Federation. Some were too afraid to take any action. But enough of them were listening. Enough of them were reconsidering their situation. When Marcus arrived on the Wraith world, he was shocked by the reception. Thousands of Wraith gathered to see him. They looked at this young human commander as if he had performed something miraculous. To them, he had simply spoken the truth and refused to be broken by those with more power. To the Wraith, this was revolutionary. The Wraith leader, an ancient being named Corvin, spoke to Marcus for hours. He told Marcus about 3 centuries of Federation control, about the slow erosion of Wraith independence, about the systems of compliance that had been built into every level of Wraith society. You said no, Corvin said simply. No one says no to the Federation. We had forgotten that it was possible. By the 4th week after the walkaway, it was clear that something fundamental had shifted in galactic power dynamics. The Federation was still the strongest military force, but they were no longer unchallenged. They were no longer assumed to be victorious. They were no longer able to act with complete confidence. Other species began reaching out to Earth with requests for everything from military hardware to scientific data. Some asked for cultural information, wanting to understand how a species so young could have developed such systems and such courage. Some wanted Marcus to visit their worlds and explain how humanity had resisted. Catherine managed the flood of requests with her usual efficiency. But even she seemed surprised by the scale of what was happening. We started this thinking we would be isolated, she told Marcus. We thought the best we could hope for was to survive in the outer sectors, keeping to ourselves while the Federation maintained control. Instead, we have become a symbol. A symbol of what? Marcus asked. A symbol that change is possible, Catherine said. That the way things have been is not the way they have to remain. That beings with courage and determination can challenge even the most powerful structures. The Federation responded by becoming increasingly aggressive. They massed ships along the borders of coalition space. They initiated economic sanctions against trading species. They began issuing ultimatums, but the ultimatums no longer worked. Species had tasted the possibility of independence. They had seen that the Federation could be challenged. They had seen that saying no did not automatically mean destruction. In the 5th week, Marcus received a communication from an unexpected source. It was from one of the Federation's own member species, the Zethys. They were requesting preliminary discussions about potential separation from the Federation and alignment with the Coalition. Marcus sat in silence when he received the message. They were winning. Not completely, not yet, but they were winning. All because one commander had refused to accept the unacceptable. Catherine found him staring out at the stars. She did not need to ask what he was thinking. She was thinking the same thing. Everything had changed because they had walked away. The entire balance of galactic power had shifted because one human had decided that surrender was not acceptable. The Federation was still powerful, but they were no longer inevitable. They were no longer untouchable, and that changed everything. 6 months after walking away from Harmony Station, Marcus stood in a similar chamber, but everything was different. The table was smaller. The air was filled with genuine conversation instead of posturing and threat. Most importantly, Earth was not sitting at the margins, begging for acceptance. Earth was sitting at the center, as one of the hosts of the gathering. The summit had been called the Coalition of Independent Worlds. It consisted of 43 species and 317 individual worlds. They represented less raw military power than the Federation, but they represented something the Federation could not buy or force: genuine cooperation, built on mutual respect. The Wraith delegation sat to Marcus's right. They had become humanity's strongest allies, their military force now working in coordination with human naval vessels. The Keldan merchants occupied the center of the chamber, their vast trading network now carrying goods between coalition worlds at unprecedented rates. The outer sector species filled the rest of the space, each one representing a people that had chosen freedom over comfortable slavery. The Zethys delegation was the newest addition. They had formally separated from the Federation 3 weeks earlier. Crow had attempted to stop them militarily, but coalition forces had intercepted the Federation ships. No shots had been fired. The Federation had blinked first, and the Zethys had walked free. Marcus listened as the various representatives discussed trade agreements, military cooperation protocols, and cultural exchange programs. No one was forcing anything. No one was demanding submission. Every agreement was built on the simple principle that cooperation between free beings was stronger than any command given to enslaved ones. During a break in the proceedings, Catherine found Marcus on the observation deck. She was no longer just his tactical advisor. She had been formally appointed as the military coordinator for the coalition. It was a position that would have been impossible to imagine 6 months earlier. The Federation just transmitted a message to all member worlds, Catherine said. She held up her datapad. They are offering concessions. They are willing to discuss expanded autonomy for member species. They are willing to review military restrictions. Marcus read the message. It was everything the Federation had refused to consider at Harmony Station. Flexibility on expansion rights, reduced restrictions on technology development, limited autonomy for military operations. The Federation was panicking. They were trying to stop the bleeding by offering the things they should have offered from the beginning. "It is too late," Marcus said simply. "Is it?" Catherine asked. "Some of the coalition members are considering it. It would be easier to remain Federation members if they had these concessions. Less risk, less disruption." Marcus did not immediately respond. He looked out at the stars, thinking about the past 6 months. He thought about the moment he had walked away from the negotiation table. He thought about the uncertainty that had followed, the real possibility that humanity would be isolated and destroyed. He thought about the species that had risked everything to stand alongside Earth. "Tell them no," Marcus said finally. "Tell them that anything the Federation offers now is only offered because we refused them before. Tell them that concessions given under pressure are concessions that can be taken away. The only real freedom is the freedom that comes from standing alone and surviving." Catherine smiled slightly. "I thought you would say something like that." Over the next days, the summit continued. Discussions covered everything from joint defense protocols to common trade standards. There were disagreements. The Wraith and the Zethys had ancient rivalries. Some coalition members wanted trade privileges that others thought were unfair. But every disagreement was handled through discussion, through debate, through compromise. Not one voice was silenced. Not one species was told what they had to do by a larger power. Not one delegate was treated as inferior or primitive or in need of guidance. They did not ask for. This was what genuine galactic cooperation looked like. This was what happened when equals sat together without pretense. On the final night of the summit, Marcus found himself alone in the observation chamber again. This time, Catherine did not join him. This time, the Wraith Commander Corvin found him instead. "You are thinking about the beginning," Corvin said. "It was not a question." "I am thinking about what would have happened if I had signed the papers," Marcus said. "I am thinking about a humanity that spent 50 years slowly being absorbed into Federation culture. I am thinking about my daughter growing up to believe that submission was natural and right." Corvin made a sound that might have been agreement or might have been approval. "I have been thinking about a similar thing. 300 years of believing that we could not refuse. 300 years of believing that the Federation was permanent and unchangeable. And now?" Marcus asked. "And now we are learning to think again," Corvin said. "You showed us that it was possible. You did not do it with weapons or military might. You did it by refusing to accept the unacceptable. You did it by walking away when everyone expected you to surrender." The Wraith Commander was silent for a moment. Then he continued. "The Federation is still powerful. They still have more ships than we do. They still have more experience. But they can be challenged now. That is the difference. Before, it seemed impossible. Now, it seems inevitable that beings will choose freedom over control." Over the following weeks, more species joined the coalition. Some came from the Federation's outer worlds. Some came from independent systems that had never joined the Federation. Some came from species that the Federation had controlled for generations and were now discovering that control was not the only option available to them. The Federation attempted several military actions to reassert their authority. Each time, coalition forces responded. Each time, the Federation faced more resistance than they had expected. Each time, they learned that their assumed dominance was not as absolute as they had believed. The war, such as it was, never truly happened. There were skirmishes and confrontations, but no full-scale conflict. Instead, what happened was a slow realization among Federation members and independent worlds alike that the old order was changing. It took 4 months. But eventually, the first Federation member species officially withdrew. The Vex, a race that had served the Federation for generations, announced their departure. 3 weeks later, the Centauri followed. Then the Call. Then 7 more species in rapid succession. The Federation was not destroyed. They still controlled vast territories and vast resources. But they were no longer inevitable. They were no longer assumed to be victorious. They were no longer the only option. Marcus returned to Earth for the first time since the walkaway. He was received as a hero, but that was not how he saw himself. He saw himself as a being who had simply said no when no needed to be said. His daughter met him at the spaceport. She was old enough now to understand that the world had changed. She asked him a simple question. "Dad, why did you refuse the Federation?" Marcus thought about how to answer. He could have talked about military strategy or political independence or resource control. But those were not the real reasons. Because accepting their terms would have meant accepting that we were less than them, Marcus said finally. It would have meant accepting that humans needed to be guided and controlled and limited. And that is not true. We are capable of building our own future. We are capable of standing alongside other species as equals. All we needed was the courage to refuse the chains, no matter how carefully they were disguised. 6 months later, the Coalition formally established its governing council. Earth held one of the permanent seats. The Wraith held another. The Keldan merchants held a third. Gradually, over the following years, more species joined the council. More worlds became part of the system. The Federation still existed. In some sectors, their power remained unchallenged. But the galaxy had learned something that could never be unlearned. The galaxy had learned that the powerful could be refused. That change was possible. That a better way of relating to each other could be built. All it had taken was one commander with the courage to walk away from a table where surrender was being offered disguised as opportunity. Marcus Houston would never lead another military campaign. Instead, he would spend his years helping to build the new structures of galactic cooperation. He would work with species from across the known worlds to create agreements built on mutual respect instead of fear. But he would always remember the moment he understood that the greatest power was not military strength or technological superiority. The greatest power was the willingness to refuse. The greatest power was the ability to say no and survive the saying of it. The greatest power was walking away from the table when the alternative was the slow death of everything that made you who you were. That moment had changed everything. That moment had rippled across the galaxy, touching species in distant sectors, inspiring beings who had lost hope, teaching the entire galactic community that the order they had accepted as permanent was actually fragile and temporary, and could be broken by anyone with the courage to break it. It had all begun because one human commander had the simple strength to say no.